Visions, dreams, ritual by fire, ritual by water. We as humans have come up with so many ways to get clean, to be worthy and accepted. And that call towards that pull towards cleanliness in a spiritual, communal sense is powerful. And in our own ways, we cry out for it. Now, it's been a little while, but I've talked about this before. We as humans, as a species, we are creative, persistent, intelligent, adaptive, and we get stuck in our own ways to a degree that our current patterns, even when we come to learn said patterns are harmful, we stay stuck anyway. And I think part of the reason we remain in our stuckness is that the routine, the habits keep us from considering alternate possibilities. And often there is comfort, even a sense of security in the familiar, even when the familiar is more harmful than helpful. One of my favorite examples of how we as a species are bright, resilient, imaginative, and sometimes just oblivious is this example of a box, a wheel or wheels, and the retractable handle. We've had boxes of some kind, wooden, stone, otherwise, for a long, long time. Archaeologists and scholars aren't even sure where the box thing started. And how long have we had the wheel? It's not for certain when we came up with it or who exactly came up with it, but the oldest known wheel that we have in our current possession was found, and I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, Ljubljana marshes in Slovenia. And I think, and there it is. And this is pretty advanced because you've got an axle and the wheel, and it's approximately 5,200 years old. But these two things, wheels and boxes, forget about retractability for a minute. Wheels and boxes, which we've had for millennia, didn't come together to create rolling luggage, so far as we know, until 1954. Thanks to the Polish-Croatian painter Alfred Joseph Krupa. And here he is with his rolling suitcase. Did any of you have one of these types where you picked up a handle in the front? Didn't we think that was the coolest thing when we first got it, right? They were horrible, though. Like they would fall over, the balance, they were top heavy. They were not great to use, especially on long walks in airports. The idea of a collapsible and expandable or telescoping came about in 1608, thanks to Hans Lippershey, a spectacle maker in the Netherlands who developed the idea for the retractable telescope. And by the way, a year later in 1609, Galileo Galilei heard of the invention, heard it described, and created his own version of it. And that got him into a lot of trouble, which we're grateful for. But these three things, wheels, boxes, and retractable handles, didn't come together until 1987. A year after I graduated high school, which isn't that long ago. But Robert Plath, a Northwest Airlines 747 pilot, put the wheel, a box, and a retractable handle together and called it the rollerboard. And the first time you saw one, you knew you had to get one. And I think it would be a safe bet that everyone here has at least one of these contraptions. How did we not come up with this sooner? A retractable handle, a wheel, and a box. So simple. But although we can be slow on the obvious sometimes, when we do see a good idea, we tend to gravitate towards it, widely adopt it, and then wonder why it took us so long to figure out something so painfully simple, and then pretty sure there can be no improvements. So we congratulate ourselves, get habituated, and stuck once again. Our theme this season, Eastertide, is post-hibernation. We are in an extended period of waking up. A 2-year lockdown, isolation, not getting to see friends and family at all in some cases, having relatives and loved ones not doing well in the hospital or otherwise unable to go and visit for your own safety and their own safety. And during that time, we found ways to adapt. We took on habits and practices to keep ourselves going, but sometimes the very things that take us through the valleys of the shadows of death are things on the other side of the valley that can hold us back. And we're not really great at admitting that we're stuck. I want to be clear that from my perspective, it is okay and good to hold on to patterns that help you wake up every morning, experience something beautiful, to hydrate, to take in nourishment. It's okay to shampoo, rinse, and repeat, to keep going as long as you can. And only you know when things inside shift to a place where you need to move from doing what it takes to function and being stuck, and when it's time to awaken from the stuckness, to stretch out your arms, to breathe in deep and begin to craft the next normal. And the truth is, the next normal is normal. It has to be. There's no more normal. We always now have to live in the next normal, the pursuit of that. When we fail to internalize that, I fear we're going to get further and further and further into trouble. We see the evidence of people that want to go back to normal, go back to the good old days, and they're acting out in violent and dangerous ways. One of the most dangerous places for us to get into this stuckness, because we as individuals do it, we as groups do it, one of the most dangerous place for this stuckness to happen is in religious institutions. Because what happens too often is we say our stuckness is superior to yours, and therefore we are favored and you are not. And because you're not favored, we need to do something about you. I want to differentiate a couple of things. Being grounded and rooted in sacred practice isn't what I'm talking about. But to get mean and nasty by claiming religious or spiritual superiority to others is a problem. A voice then spoke to him and commanded him to eat, but Peter refused. And the voice responds, "What God has made clean, you must not call profane." See, the Jesus movement, at the time this passage is talking about, is ready to break away from certain things that have kept them closed off, that has allowed them, through this objective adherence to Mosaic and Levitical dietary laws, to think of themselves as superior. Now, this break from following those rigid laws isn't about a wanton permissiveness to consume whatever you want, but a break intended to open the circle and include people like Cornelius, a captain in the Italian Guard who would otherwise be disallowed from joining the Jesus movement. Now, Cornelius, a captain in the Italian Guard, if you've ever been to Italy or had really good Italian food, or maybe had a piece of exceptionally good prosciutto, right? Is that a reason to not include somebody into the family? Again, not against anyone who chooses to practice that way and have belonging based on those things, but that's not the way of Christianity. And it's okay to do those things so long as you don't claim superiority and want to hurt others. This passage talks about the Jesus movement being pushed past the shimmering stuckness of religious superiority and towards a joy-filled complexity of diversity and inclusion by declaring all foods clean, with the underlying agenda being the declaration that all people are clean and worthy of belonging. And I say joy-filled complexity deliberately, because we, as a community, we want to be inclusive. And when it comes to food, things can get complicated, right? Because you got vegan folks, you got vegetarian folks, folks that prefer to be gluten-free, folks that need to be gluten-free. And we do our best to be inclusive. So we have arrays of food and we label, etc. Whereas in some communities, there's no labels. Because there's an understanding this is what we serve, and you're either in or you're out. Sometimes the answers to progress, to healing, to inclusion are obvious and have been with us for centuries. And the truth is, when we include people, we are better off. Now, this weekend is a sacred weekend, a commemoration and commitment to Earth Day and its values. And I want to lift up some glaringly obvious lessons learned during COVID-19 as related to environmental healing. Again, we've had the box, the wheel, and the retractable handle forever. They didn't come together till 1987. Sometimes the solutions are right in front of us. So in some of these images I want to share some data released by NASA and ESA, the European Space Agency, shows pollution maps. And in this first one, to the left is the mid-Atlantic of the United States. And in 2019, kind of tracking 2015 to 2019, and then March 2020. It wasn't even that far into us stopping. The next slide. This next slide is northern China, obviously. Look at the top corner. That's January 2020. And the next one is February 2020. Let's go to the next one. So this one's top to bottom. This is around the Wuhan area, which is where we believe the COVID-19 virus first broke out. Various conspiracy theories around that, but our siblings in China were the first ones to be affected by this global pandemic. The top left slide is January 2019. The bottom left slide is January 2020. And the bottom right slide is February 2020, just a year later from the slides above it. a year later. I think I had seen these images before preparing for today, but something about seeing them in the context of this moment floored me. I broke down emotionally. Because one of the things we keep talking about doing is getting back to normal. Not everything about getting back to normal is good for us. We gave the earth 1 year. We took off from a lot of our nonsense, our unnecessary consumption. We cried about not having toilet paper for 1 year, and look how the earth took care of itself. Sometimes the answers have been with us forever and are painfully obvious. And I say this knowing that after we're done today, I'm going to hop in my car and drive to the eastern part of the county to go home. Another incredibly glaring example to me from the COVID cleaning cycle that happened during long lockdown, the Ganga River, sometimes called the Ganges River. Has anyone been there? A few of us. I've been there, and it is a holy place. I was not about to get into that water. The water was really disgusting. And a lot of stuff is happening in that water. Religious purifications, cremations. So it's a heavily sacred place, and I could feel that. But then my Western conditioned mind would not let me go down the steps and into the water because I was like, I don't really want a parasite today. Well, the Ganga River experienced a 55% decline in cloudiness. It got 50% clearer. There was even one part of the river where the water was deemed potable. You've all seen pictures. In 1 year, there was a part of the Ganga River that was potable. You could have dipped a straw in it and drank and probably been okay. Incredible. And these miracles, these natural miracles, thanks to the obvious centuries known answer, stop polluting and declare all things clean. As we continue to wake up, stretch and breathe and move into post-hibernation, and the challenges of creating the next and the next and the next normal, let's keep in mind that we've had boxes and wheels and handles for a long time, and that our inactivity during COVID lockdown gave the earth a chance to heal herself a little bit. The answers to our deepest and most difficult questions have probably been with us for centuries and are probably rather obvious. We have the power to declare all things clean. Let us stretch, wake up, and use our power. Amen.